My parents disowned me on a Tuesday. Not with screams. Not with tears. Not with the kind of dramatic chaos movies make you expect when families fall apart. No, they chose the polished route. The respectable route. The kind of cruelty that still folds napkins neatly and worries about what the neighbors might think. I was 19, 6 weeks pregnant, and sitting at our tiny kitchen table, clutching a mug of tea with both hands. I was too nauseous even to sip. My mother's face had already gone pale. My father's jaw was tight, like a trap ready to snap. And here's the worst part. It wasn't the pregnancy itself that shocked them. Not really. It was who I was pregnant by, Ryan, my boyfriend of almost 2 years. The same man my parents referred to simply as that electrician, as if a job title could make a human less worthy, less important, less clean. My father sat across from me, silent for nearly a full minute, letting the tension stretch like an unbroken wire. Then he finally spoke. "Tell me this is a joke." I swallowed hard. "It's not." My mother pressed her fingers to her forehead, shaking as if the world itself had turned upside down. I had rehearsed this conversation 100 times in my head, picturing every way it could go wrong, every way I could soften the blow. I thought maybe if I spoke carefully, responsibly, they would eventually be practical. Disappointed, yes, but still my parents. Instead, my father looked at me the way people look at a house after a flood. Not with grief, not with concern, just damage. "How long have you been with him?" he asked, sharp and cold. My face burned. "Dad," I started. "No, you don't get to be embarrassed now," he snapped. My mother finally looked up, her soft voice shaking. "Were you trying to ruin your life?" Her words hit me so hard I almost laughed. In our family, ruin had always had one definition: anything that made them lose social status. I grew up in a house where image was oxygen. My father was a partner at a local accounting firm. My mother hosted charity luncheons, speaking in that soft, expensive voice women develop when judgment is disguised as elegance. My older brother was excelling in med school. My younger sister was already being described as Ivy-bound. And me? I was the one with potential, until I chose a path they didn't approve of. I had been accepted into a nursing program at community college and worked part-time at a pediatric clinic. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't lazy. I was just in love with a man who wore work boots instead of loafers. Ryan was 22, licensed, steady, and already making more than half the men my mother labeled as promising. But in my parents' eyes, his paycheck mattered less than the fact that he installed wiring instead of giving TED Talks about market disruption. My father leaned back in his chair, the corners of his mouth tight. "So, what's the plan?" he asked, though his tone told me it wasn't a question. "We're keeping the baby," I said honestly. My mother gasped. My father laughed, a single, sharp, humorless sound. "Of course you are," he said. I stared at him. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said slowly, "you've decided to throw away every opportunity we gave you for a boy who climbs ladders for a living." Something inside me snapped. Silence filled the kitchen like a thick fog. I could feel my heartbeat pounding in my ears. "Ryan works harder in a week than most of the men you admire work in a month," I said, my voice shaking but firm. My father stood slowly, every movement deliberate, dangerously calm. "Do not lecture me about respect," he said. His eyes were sharp, cold, and unyielding. And then my mother started crying. Not because I was pregnant, not because of the shock, but because, through her tears, she whispered, "What am I supposed to tell people?" It hit me like a punch to the stomach. Her first thought wasn't for me. It was for her image, for the story she had to manage. And in that moment, I understood with terrifying clarity. There was no way I could be their daughter and become a mother in their eyes. One identity erased the other. My father walked to the counter, opened a drawer, and pulled out my spare house key. He placed it on the table with a thud. "You want to be grown?" he said. "Go be grown." I stared at the key. At him. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. "You're kicking me out?" He didn't flinch. "You made an adult decision. Adult decisions come with adult consequences." I wanted to scream at the unfairness. He had paid my brother's rent for all 4 years of college. Yet now fairness had no place in our house. Only hierarchy. And I had just dropped to the bottom. Permanently. I grabbed my 2 duffel bags, my chair scraping across the floor. "You can't be serious," I said. "I am completely serious," he replied, arms crossed, his face unreadable. My mother still wouldn't meet my eyes. That hurt more than my father's coldness. Rage is easier to survive than abandonment disguised as silence. I ran upstairs, packed what little I had left, and called Ryan from the bedroom floor, trying not to gag from stress and morning sickness. When he answered, I managed only 4 words before my voice broke. "They kicked me out." 18 minutes later, Ryan was at the house. I watched every second from the front window, like someone waiting for rescue from a flood. He didn't storm in, didn't yell, didn't try to prove himself. He just walked onto the porch, took my bags, looked me straight in the eyes, and said softly, "You're not doing this alone." My father watched from the hallway, a spectator to the story he had warned me about. My mother stayed in the kitchen, silent, tears streaming down her face. I got into Ryan's truck, shaking so badly I couldn't buckle the seatbelt for 20 seconds. Then I cried, hard, all the way to his apartment. And for the next 19 years, my parents never came looking for me. Not when I got married. Not when my son was born. Not when Ryan built his electrical business from a single van and a borrowed toolbox into one of the most respected contracting companies in the county. Life proved that love and perseverance mattered more than their approval. Time moved differently after that day. 19 years old, kicked out, and holding my future in my trembling hands. I learned quickly that survival didn't come with instructions. Ryan and I settled into a tiny apartment. No fancy furniture, no safety net, just 2 people determined to make it work. I remember the first night clearly. We cooked on a small hot plate, the smell of burnt toast filling the room, while the baby I carried inside me shifted restlessly. Ryan held my hand, his grip steady. "We'll figure it out," he said, voice calm, unshakable. And somehow, hearing him say that, I believed it. Every day was a battle. I worked long shifts at the pediatric clinic, my uniform often stained with paint or glue from the kids' art projects. Ryan left early mornings and came back late nights, van packed with tools, his hands raw and calloused. Some nights, I'd watch him fall asleep on the couch, exhaustion written on his face, and think, this man is everything they said he wasn't, and somehow he's everything I need. The judgment from my parents faded into a distant echo. They never called, never texted, never sent a card. Holidays came and went without acknowledgement. Birthday parties passed in silence. At first, it hurt deeply, but slowly, I realized that the world outside my family's walls was bigger than their opinions. Love, respect, and dignity were built, not inherited. Ryan's company started small, a single van, a borrowed toolbox, and his unwavering work ethic. But word of his skill spread. He never compromised, never cut corners, never let pride get in the way of getting the job done right. The people he worked with trusted him, clients praised him, and slowly he became the man my parents had scoffed at. When our son was born, I held him close and made a vow. He would never feel the kind of judgment that had defined my childhood. I would teach him that worth isn't measured by a paycheck, by a job title, or by someone else's perception. And in the quiet moments when I thought about my parents, I understood something profound. They hadn't stayed away because I was dead to them. They stayed away because they expected failure. And when I didn't fail, their script collapsed. I was living proof that their rules didn't apply. By the time our first home was built, modest, sturdy, filled with love, the life Ryan and I had carved out together was unrecognizable from the one my parents had imagined. Every corner told a story of resilience. Every wall a testament to choices made in courage rather than fear. And yet, despite all of it, the shadow of them lingered. I had proven my strength, my worth, and my independence. But the memory of their cold dismissal never fully left me. 19 years passed with silence as my parents' constant companion. No holidays, no birthdays, not even a simple check-in. Life moved forward, but the memory of that Tuesday, the day they chose appearances over their own daughter, never faded. Then one rainy Thursday evening, everything shifted. My doorbell rang. I opened the door, and for a moment, I didn't even recognize my mother. She looked smaller, older, worn by time and life itself. No makeup, no pretense, just her. The first words she spoke weren't apologies. They were practical, urgent. Your father lost everything. Nothing about, I missed you, or I thought about you every day. Just a crisis, a need, a timing that demanded attention. After 19 years, money had finally forced a reckoning. I let her inside, not out of forgiveness, but curiosity. She told me about bad investments my father had made, about how my brother had moved across the country and couldn't help, how my sister had her own life to manage. And then she looked around our home, the one built from love, effort, and sacrifice, and whispered, "We didn't know you could do this." Her words landed harder than an apology ever could. I realized the truth. They hadn't stayed away because they wanted to punish me. They stayed away because they expected me to fail. And when I didn't, they had no script left. I stood, walked to the door, and spoke calmly, letting the weight of 19 years of independence and achievement fill my voice. "The man you threw me away for built every good thing in this house." She cried, softly, quietly. I didn't. Some grief expires long before the people who caused it return, asking to be let in. I closed the door and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Ryan, the boy in work boots they despised, had become my partner, my strength, and the father of my child. Together, we built a life that no judgment, no social ladder, and no rigid expectation could ever dismantle. And in that life, I discovered something profound. Love and perseverance matter infinitely more than approval or status. So, if you're listening and struggling to be accepted by people who judge you unfairly, remember this. Your worth is not defined by others. Build, fight, and rise, even when the world doubts you.